Are we live? I think we're good. Welcome back to Tailosive Tech live on YouTube, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're having a fantastic Ides of March. We're halfway through, halfway to April. Ooh, April Fools. Hopefully, that's when everyone can stop checking YouTube subscriptions because it's going to be filled with tons of joke videos. Hope you're all doing well because Universal Control, this is not an April Fool's joke, is actually out. It's available to the public. You just have to be on the latest version of iPadOS and macOS. And it's still kind of spotty. For some people, it's worked flawlessly, which is interesting, and for others, it's hard to activate. For me, it took a fresh reboot on the iPad before it would actually start activating, and sometimes it works okay. Other times it's a bit laggy, which is weird. I've actually had a more consistent universal control experience when using my iMac Pro and iPad Pro together, opposed to my MacBook Pro. Even though the MacBook Pro has Apple Silicon, it's the M1 Max talking to the A12X, whereas before the iMac Pro was on Intel. Sometimes the mouse gets a little laggy, it gets a little hangy, and the scrolling is jumpy. So it took them forever to actually get this out of beta. But then they labeled all the features and settings with beta tags. I think it's off by default. It's not April Fool's, not quite yet. But it's when it works, it's really nice. The problem is it doesn't always work, at least for me. This is part of the reason I was willing to sell the Magic Keyboard case for my iPad Pro, was because I knew that eventually, at least after last WWDC, I knew eventually I'd be able to control my iPad Pro through my keyboard and trackpad, which I've done somewhat, but again, it's still been pretty buggy and kind of jumping all over the place. So I'm still grateful I sold my keyboard case because I don't use it too much, but when it's working reliably, it is like the coolest thing in the world. It is like probably one of the coolest new crucial joints of the Apple ecosystem. Another great attribute to the Apple walled garden, because you can literally just be in the middle of using your Mac and be like, oh, let me access this one thing over here. You just move the track, but you just move the mouse over and it suddenly appears on the iPad. I showed it to my wife this morning and she was like, whoa, how do you do that? It is magic. I agree, Ronick. It's magic is when it's working properly, the best description I have for it. But unfortunately, I'm annoyed by like the amount of time it spent only in beta, and how it worked fairly well in the beta, and now that it's at a public release, it's kind of all glitchy and laggy for me. Um, I'm experiencing the same thing as Ronick. I think he said my iPad became kind of buggy. That's what I was experiencing as well. Like sometimes it's very low latency and it works fine. Other times, like once a second, it'll freeze, and I'll move the mouse around and then it'll not do anything, and then catch up with my motion, and it's just Sometimes it's the apps zoom in, like I can't see the borders of my apps anymore. Well, that sounds like an accessibility thing anymore. Like just triple tap. I have that feature enabled. If I triple tap on my iPad with three fingers, go 1, 2, 3, then these things pop up. There's a zoom in option, zoom out, choose region. So if you're watching something on YouTube or something, and you want to crop in further, or if you want to look at a certain aspect of the iPad's display, just tap 3 times with 3 fingers. It's kind of cool. Let's see. That works great with my Intel MacBook Pro and an A12 Air. That's funny. I wonder if there's something inherently broken with Apple Silicon that makes it not work as reliably as the Intel version. How backwards is that? Um, Pharmacy student, photo editing for fun. Oh, okay. I think because it's still in beta, it's not working the best. Hopefully by iOS 16, it gets out of beta. So even though it's accessible to the public, keep in mind, this is not the public beta. This is not, you don't have to enroll your device into some beta profile. You don't have to download a certain thing to access this. This is the public release of macOS Monterey and iPadOS 15. This is just available for everyone, and yet it's still technically in beta, which I'm a bit confused by. Maybe Apple thought it was weird that they had this headlining feature that they were talking about for so long, and they didn't quite iron out all the kinks, and it wasn't working quite properly, but they were like, we just got to send it out anyway. It just works. I'm glad it's working for Scott. Let's see. I wonder if my 2018 iPad Pro was not powerful enough to do universal control properly. It got really hot and lagged, then crashed. Sounds like iPad OS. Yeah, I really wish I knew. Um, Typically it's on Apple, but Apple's always had buggy software to a certain extent. It's just a matter of some being buggier than others. I've just been surprised by, in my experience, oftentimes having a more stable operating system when I'm on the beta program, which doesn't sound right. But often when I'm on the public releases, I experience more bugs and more issues, which is weird. So I'm using it right now. Let me hold up the iPad so you can basically see it working. And it's working fine right now. Like there's no latency. I'm not seeing any of the lag or holdups. If I switch it back to the MacBook here, um, come back and forth. I'm trying to recreate it and figure out what I have to do to make it not be so laggy on occasion. But yep, wait, there it goes. Now watch this. Watch. If you can see the mouse, just look at it skipping. Like I'm moving my finger gracefully and at a consistent speed. Oh, it just fixed itself. I think it's because when I went back to the Mac, return to the Mac. Well, I tried to. I'm trying my best to figure out how to recreate it, but there are certain times where the mouse hangs basically, and it'll stay in place for 1 second, even though my finger is still moving. Legalized Comedy says same with me. Hey, Civilizer, welcome. Scott says, but I was never on the beta beforehand. Okay, it still says beta, even though it's not fully complete. Isn't this like a weird new phase of Mac OS feature? Is like it's not in the developer beta, it's not in the public beta, it's the official release, but the official release still has beta features in it. It's odd. No, I agree. What is so different about universal control? My friend says PCs have had this for years. It's definitely not built in by default, that's for sure. You definitely can't just put two PCs next to each other and then move your mouse and it comes off. So I'd like to figure out what context your friend is talking about, Sharon, because yes, I'm aware there are third-party applications with apps that you have to download on the tablet and the PC, set up an account, set up an email and a password, make sure that you install the drivers on both, and then yes, there are ways of using one mouse to control multiple devices, but that's existed on Mac as well a long time too. What we're trying to figure out here is a way to build this first party, build it into the ecosystem so you don't have to have another email, another password, another app to download, and all this added complexity and getting more emails every day of, hey, you should pay for this option and it costs money to unlock this certain other feature. It's like, I don't want to deal with the ads. Sometimes it's good to have baked in first party software features because it doesn't complicate things and it's not that hard to interact with. Plus the fact iPads are far more common than Android tablets, so the concept of using two Macs and an iPad with one keyboard and mouse is probably going to be a fair bit more common than someone using an Android tablet and their PC together. I'm trying to use that, especially because most Android tablets are not that big. Um, Samsung has copied it with their new notebooks. Remote access is not universal control. I tried explaining that yesterday and my head nearly exploded. Well, yeah, I don't know exactly what example people are using, but remote access is when I believe you download an app or Chrome extension and then you can access another computer remotely. But it's not universal control is when the devices are literally right next to each other and you just have one continuous motion of the mouse moving to the iPad and then moving back to the Mac. And I can, what's kind of nice that I've really appreciated about universal control. Oh, it's hanging here. Or maybe it's just, all the apps on the home screen make it hard. Let me try this. You see the mouse? I'm moving my finger at the same speed. But oh, now it's fixed. Now it's steady. Let me go back to the Mac, come back to the iPad. That's fine. It's hard to recreate on command, but it happens enough for me to be annoyed by it. One thing I do like though that's very helpful because I'm using my MacBook Pro now. For those who can't see, obviously, because of how I framed the camera. My iMac Pro is not here anymore. We've set that up in the bedroom for my wife, so it's it's a somewhat cleaner desk. I have a bunch of accessories I need to clean up on, but if I'm using my iPad for something, I can change the volume. As you can see, the volume go up and down on the iPad from my MacBook keyboard. So especially when even the Magic Keyboard case, the $300 accessory that you partner with your iPad, that doesn't have volume controls on it. So the only way to control the volume on the iPad Pro is to reach up from what you're doing and click these buttons, or go to Control Center and adjust the volume slider here. Now that Universal Control lets me just take over the iPad display, and I can type with the MacBook keyboard, and I can change the volume from my MacBook. That saves a lot of time, and it's a lot more convenient, especially when I have video playing or music playing off of the iPad, which does happen on occasion. Usually I'm video editing or working on my MacBook, and then I'm playing a video on the iPad or something like that. Milla Time says, try dragging a file from your iPad onto your Mac or vice versa. Yeah, we've done that in the previous versions. I guess I haven't tried it with the new version yet. Let's see, I've got a thumbnail here, or just a picture. It's doing that text highlight thing. I wish I had an easy way of capturing my display, but I don't really at this point. Okay, I'm going to move a photo over and add it to download. So yeah, that feature works. I believe what didn't work before was moving a picture from the Mac to the iPad. So I'm going to try that really quick. I'm going to pick up the JPEG, move it over, drop it. Okay, so that worked. I just picked up this picture off of the downloads in my Mac folder. This is the iPhone 15, by the way. I'm a super leaker. So I just dragged that over to the iPad, and now it showed up. So that was one thing my iMac Pro was not doing. It did not let me move files from the Mac to the iPad. Now it's letting me do that. So luckily that's not a problem anymore. Oh, it's acting up again. There, look. It almost knows when I'm holding it up, because as soon as I'm like, hey, wait, here it comes. But when the iPad was just off camera, it was doing that thing where like once a second the mouse would hang. I'd love to drag and drop Mac apps to iPad and use the app. Yeah, can I drag Final Cut Pro onto iPadOS? That would be nice. It is not members only chat right now, as you can tell by all the non-members. That is usually restricted to just the members only streams. So $2 a month, channel members watch me edit. They already know, they've already seen today's tech video that'll go live right after this. Teslas in Tech says, Drew, it's my birthday, so glad you were streaming. Hey, happy birthday, Teslas in Tech. That's funny. It's also my mother's birthday today. I was just texting her this morning. It sucks I don't get to see her today because she's out of state, but I'm excited to see her again. So you've got the same birthday as my mom. Probably different year. Come on. I swear, I literally just watched it happen, and I hold up the iPad, and then it stops doing it. It's trolling me. It's like it knows it's on camera, so it wants to work when it's on camera. The brightness keys work for me. Oh, I haven't tried brightness. Let me try that. Let me move the mouse over here. No. That's weird. It's not adjusting the brightness of the MacBook or the iPad, which is odd. Huh. That would make sense. I wouldn't be shocked if it did that in a different update. But yeah, you do still have gesture controls with the MacBook trackpad, so you can lift this stuff up and mouse is hanging. See it? I'm moving my mouse consistently and it's still lagging. That's annoying. Okay, but yeah, I can switch to multitasking here. Even when I'm in like a video editing app like Over. The trackpad, which is much bigger on my MacBook Pro than it was on the Magic Keyboard case, can adjust like the size of things. So like, let's say I'm editing this thumbnail and I want to make the Model X. Oh, Chris M became a supporter. Thank you very much. I'll see you in the next editing live stream. But like, yeah, I'm controlling the iPad through my MacBook keyboard and trackpad. If I click on this and oh, come on. You were doing this earlier. I can move it around, of course, but there you go. I can pinch to zoom, and just using my MacBook trackpad, I can adjust the size of images. So I designed this thumbnail primarily through Universal control. See, it's hanging right now. I'm moving my mouse consistently and it lags. It freezes. That's annoying. But if I pinch, I can make the text bigger and smaller, which was a lot harder to do with the tiny trackpad on the keyboard case. Now I have the full size trackpad. So thank you, Chris. Um, is universal control only on the Mac? Pretty much. So this was another question that came out before. People were saying, can you use universal control between two iPads? As far as we can tell, no. That's not an option because it would require the iPadOS team to do work. And the iPadOS team, which allegedly doesn't exist, they don't want to design and optimize for things. So this is purely a macOS feature that the macOS team had to optimize the iPad for, not so much something you could do single-handedly with an iPad, which is a bit of a bummer. Doing a restart on both devices really helped with issues. I just wonder if it's going to keep doing that even after I restart it. I don't want to have to restart it every time. Accelerometer probably does something. Yeah, the iPad knows when I pick it up. Honestly, I know there's some long, complicated way of figuring out what my iPad battery health is. I'm not interested. I've looked it up. I know there's some coconut app I got to download and do the whole thing. But I can already tell the battery health on my iPad Pro is not very good. And it's partially not because it's old, but I think it's partially Apple's fault that they don't build in optimized battery charging options with this iPad Pro. Because when I used it for like these days when I'm doing most of my work at a desk, my iPad becomes very much a desk accessory. It becomes my sidecar external display, or it becomes my YouTube machine, my Discord machine, or my email machine, and it's plugged in for a long time. And I don't like having to fuss around with, oh, it's at 100%, let me unplug it. Okay, now it's down to 18% right now, or 5%, let me plug it in again. So I would love to just leave it plugged in and let the iPad take all of its power from the charger and not use battery power. But I'm fairly confident iPadOS does not do that. It basically just pulls all of its power from the battery, and even if it's plugged in for days and days and weeks at a time, it'll keep the battery at 100%. It will not lower it to 80%. There's no option in settings. This is the latest version of iPadOS. Nowhere does it say, like, optimize battery charging. You can't turn that on. That's not a feature. All it says is auto lock or low power mode. That's it. My Mac has optimized battery charging, which has turned on, by the way. I just want to report that thankfully my MacBook has gotten the message and realized, hey, I'm plugged in for extended periods of time. I should not leave the battery at 100%. So it took it about a month, but after that first month of use, my MacBook Pro now is at 80%, and it's pulling all of its power from the wall charger. It's not pulling it from the battery. I can tell because of the icon in battery settings. It says power source, power adapter, and it's locked at 80%, and it says charging on hold, rarely used on battery, and then there's an option that says charge to full now. So if I want it to go up to 100%, I press that button. But for everything else, it just stays at 80%, which is much better for the battery health. But the iPad, noticeably, when I unplug it, does not take very long for it to go down to zero. So I'm not going to be surprised if the battery health on this thing is like 75-70% next time I check it. So it's a bit of a bummer because especially for people who use their iPads at their desk, that's kind of what Universal Control is great at. It's like, okay, this is my Mac. Oh, let me do something on the iPad here. Or people using it as an external monitor via Sidecar, which is what I was using before Universal Control came out. And even that was kind of buggy for me, unfortunately. It was not consistent, and the frame rate would drop, and it would get laggy, and it would freeze, and I couldn't use it because the display wouldn't update. If you're going to use it for Sidecar and that kind of thing, they should cap off the battery at 80% and try to preserve it. I don't want to get a battery replacement because this is already like inherently not super duper useful because of how iPadOS is designed. So I'm not willing to spend more money on the iPad Pro. I'll just charge it because it's normally near a charger anyway. I'm just saying it's a shame that the battery health is probably so much worse because they've intentionally left out battery health preservation features. I thought the battery health on my iPad was going to be pretty bad, but when I checked it, I found it was still at 94%. Makes me wonder if it's the newer software. It could be. I have a feeling because of how long I've left it plugged in, and there's been times it's been at 100% for many, many days and not gotten much use. Why do you and others call yourself the Apple Sheep when you're actually very honest with your reviews? It's an effort to get past name calling. So I've most often, I complain about Apple a lot, like I am right now, but most often, the reason I'm complaining about Apple is because I do love their products and I don't like using non Apple. I've tried Android and I've tried Windows and I've tried stepping outside the ecosystem. And I find everything outside of the Apple ecosystem a barren wasteland of unoptimized crap that gets poor software updates over time and not much attention. So, for the same reason, like a lot of people may complain about superhero movies or about Star Wars films not being as good as they'd like. It's not that they hate Star Wars. If they did, they would stop watching. It's because they do like Star Wars or superhero movies or Marvel or DC. They do like those things, but they hold them to a high standard because they like them so much. I would compare that to myself in a fairly similar fashion of like sports teams. There's certain sports teams that people will die by and defend and be like, yeah, that's my team. I love my team. But you'll still complain about some of the players and saying, oh, they should have done this or this is wrong. It's the same thing with Apple. I'm a huge fan of Apple and I do complain about them a lot. But because I lean towards the Apple team and I like the Apple ecosystem and I like AirDrop and the watch and the Mac and everything working together, I still unlock my MacBook every morning with my watch and I unlock my watch every morning with Face ID and I use Apple Pay and I love the Apple Card. I'm still on the Apple team. And when I was growing up, the YouTube space, it might be placebo, but the YouTube community did not feel very as Apple friendly as it is today. I feel like more people on YouTube have kind of caught on to the idea that Apple is a very popular brand and it's for a reason, and that a lot of people like Apple products, and that you actually can accumulate a decent audience and get a large number of views if you start talking about Apple, and not just in a hateful way, but in a positive manner as well. And when I first started on YouTube doing tech videos, there was not as many Apple channels as there were now. There was basically everything Apple Pro and iJustine. And, Marquez occasionally talked about Apple, but it was definitely not like most of what he talked about. And it's changed a lot now. There's a lot more like dedicated Apple channels. There's countless ones I could list off that basically all they talk about is Apple. But when I first started, I was a big fan and I defended Apple in a lot of their decisions that were heavily criticized at the time. So I was often referred to as, you're an Apple sheep. Oh, you're biased towards Apple. And I just wanted to get past the name calling and get past the community of, oh, let's write him off. His opinion doesn't matter. He's an Apple sheep. And my whole terminology coming onto YouTube was trying to embrace the fact, yes, it's okay to have a bias. Just because you're biased towards something or you have a preference towards something doesn't mean your opinion is worthless. You can be biased and you can have a preference and still weigh your opinion on something and share your thoughts. I think that was okay and acceptable. So yes, I've in more recent history, because I spend a lot of my time complaining about Apple and giving my honest feedback, people are like, well, why do you call yourself an Apple sheep? You're not a sheep. A sheep would like everything. It's like, well, I still follow Apple and I still buy their stuff and I'm still a fan, but sometimes the sheep strays from the path and sometimes the sheep has to be pulled back by the shepherd, Tim Cook. So it's basically getting past the name calling. Is why yeah, okay, I'm an Apple sheep. Let's talk about the actual products now. Do you think the MacBook Pro will feel slow after you return the Studio? Probably a little bit when it comes to exporting. I mean, one reason why I don't think the Mac Studio will feel much faster is that I'm going to have to use it with the Studio display. Mac Studio will not come with a built-in screen of any kind. I am picking up the Studio display to review, not to keep. And that's going to be non-mini LED 60 hertz. So as cool as it looks, and I like the build, I like the chassis, and I like the somewhat thin bezels, and I like the built-in speakers and the boxy industrial look of the Studio display. Every time I use the Mac Studio, it will be 60 hertz. There's no way around that. You could try to AirPlay it to the MacBook Pro, but AirPlay does not preserve 120 hertz or the XDR capabilities of mini LED. So every time I use it, the refresh rate is going to be noticeably halved. And I do pick that up. It is very noticeable to me whenever I use a device that's not 120, especially because I've gotten so used to it. On my phone has 120 hertz, and my MacBook has it, my iPad has it. Um, the only thing I use regularly that doesn't have it, I guess, is my watch and my TV. But I don't mind it on the TV because most of the time the content I'm watching is 24 frames a second, not 30 or 60. So you, Luke, and MaxTech are all called Apple Sheep, but we'll roast them when necessary. Yeah, I'd hope so. Before you get rid of your iPad, will you check the battery health? I'll probably be a few years from now, but still. At some point, probably near the end of its life, I would check the battery health, but I'm not planning on getting rid of it anytime soon. So yeah. There was a time everything Apple Pro was only source of leaks and rumors. I remember that. I remember that very clearly. That was I was watching tech videos long before I was making them. It never really occurred to me that maybe I could start making tech content. I was just like kind of interested in Apple products and I thought they were neat. But I was following the whole iPhone 4 leaks stuff, and I was just a fan at the time. There was other tech channels that I found that were not um, that popular, or I don't even think exist anymore. They may have been rebranded or bought out several times, but I used to watch this channel growing up. I think his name was Techno Waffle, but he quit. He stopped doing tech videos. He wasn't enjoying it. Oh, thank you for the super chat, Paul. He said, just got the M1 MacBook Air. Would you recommend the trackpad or the mouse that you can't use while charging? Well, the mouse is cheaper. I don't know. You already have a MacBook Air, so it would feel weird for you to buy a trackpad when the MacBook Air already comes with a trackpad. I mean, it's up to you what you think would be more useful. I know certain people like my friend Ross, they very much prefer the Magic Trackpad to the Magic Mouse because they can use it while charging, and they like all the multi-touch gestures and all that. So thank you for the super chat, Paul. That was really nice of you. Uh, no, it's not Techno Buffalo. That's John Rettinger. He's still doing videos. I'm talking about Techno Waffle. He was like comedic. He was trying to be funny, but he also uh, rebranded his channel. I remember because I was really sad. He quit doing YouTube. He said he's not enjoying it, and he couldn't handle a lot of the toxicity in the comments. So he sold the channel to someone else, and I believe someone else took the channel from him, rebranded it as something else, and then that guy quit later because he couldn't get it working. It was not Techno Buffalo. I know exactly who that is, and he's still making content. He just stepped away from Techno Buffalo and became John Rettinger, which is his name. But yeah, I remember him doing comedic videos that were mostly Apple related, and I thought it was funny and enjoyable, but he didn't want to handle the audience and he didn't enjoy the toxic comments, so he stepped away from it. But that was just one of the tech channels I was watching growing up, and I just thought it was kind of news entertaining wise. I wasn't thinking to myself, oh, I could get into this business or I could start making videos like that. I just watched it from the same reason you watch a TV show or a movie. Um, then later on in life, I was like, I'm watching a lot of tech content and I'm trying to make YouTube videos, but no one's watching them. Maybe I should try to make videos that people are actually searching for, because before tech videos, I was just doing comedy skits and action scenes that were really bad, and I was a teenager and I was really into cinema and just trying to make feature-length movies and short films. But I realized that wasn't really much of what I was watching on YouTube. I was watching more tech videos, so I was like, well, if I want people to watch my videos, I should probably start making things that people are looking for. No one's looking for 14-year-old doing a short film. So I got into the tech space, and it didn't take off right away. It took several years before actually people started clicking on the tech videos I was making. But can we see your setup with the universal control? I don't have a great way to show it to you because how about this? I'll show it to you when I get the Mac Studio, because then I can hold up everything. But right now I'm live streaming off my MacBook Pro, which is plugged in to a dozen accessories. I've got the Cam Link plugged in, and the Ethernet plugged in, and the power plugged in, and so I can't really. My camera's on a tripod right now. I can't really pick up the whole camera and turn it around. But you can just imagine a messy setup with cables with a MacBook Pro right next to an iPad. But otherwise, I would like to show you. Have you been getting this weird bug where YouTube page stops loading? I have not, luckily, but I'm sorry to hear that. If they drop the price $1,500, I'll get the XDR display. So what would that be? $3,500? Yeah, that's still a lot for me personally. Maybe I could justify it if it was perfect. And by perfect, I mean it has the center stage camera, it has built-in speakers, it has thin bezels, it has 120 hertz, it does everything, and maybe I could justify $3,000 or so. But that's, I don't know, that's a lot. I did watch Soldier Knows Best. Yeah, that was another channel that was basically like one of the very few tech channels that existed back when I was watching. Um, can you please tell your mods to relax? The mods are intentionally uh, enforcing rules because if you don't enforce the rules, then people will push the boundaries and limits of what they can get away with. Just don't worry about it. They're just doing their job. I've asked them to be picky, and they are being picky. So don't worry about it. Um, you think the iPhone will ever be 7 inches, and when do you think it will happen? If they got the bezels shrunk down even further, yeah, it's not that far away. We're at 6.7, right? 6.7 to 7? Yeah, I'll say yeah, that we'll get to 7 inches eventually. Thank you for the super chat, Benjamin. He says, do you think if Apple made a physical game engine similar to the media engine in the next M chip that accelerated gaming performance, would that get the industry to develop games? Heck no. They've already done this. It's called Metal. Metal is Apple's graphics engine that if you optimize games to run for it, they will run incredibly well, as they have on the iPad, which you can get games to run at 120 FPS at a high resolution, and it doesn't consume much power. So there's no if to this question. Apple has already done this. Apple's already made a graphics engine that, again, does this have to happen on every live stream? I don't want to turn every live stream into that there's nothing Apple can do to get game developers to optimize games for the Mac. It's not a hardware problem. It's not a problem Apple can solve. It's basically just the market has spoken that there's not going to be enough money generated. Thank you, Ops. That was nice of you to become a channel member. You can join us on the members only live streams for next time I'm editing a video. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Appreciate that, but no, I don't think I don't think there's anything Apple can do software wise that would make all the game devs go, oh, okay, we'll optimize our games now. We weren't gonna before, but now we can. Not that long ago, 5.5 inches was considered huge. Now it's considered mini. A 7-inch iPhone is likely to happen. Well, keep in mind the context, Marngel. Like, the 5.5-inch iPhone was considered huge, but it did have a big forehead and a big chin. So the phone, the iPhone 7 Plus and 8 Plus with 5.5-inch displays, for one, they were a 16:9 aspect ratio, which is much wider than this one. But the footprint was very similar. The only reason 6.7 inch is now huge is because, thank you for the super chat, Kyle. I'll answer that in a second. Is because the bezel goes right to the edge now. The bezel is going from the very, very bottom corner to the very, very top corner. So 6.7 is not exactly apples to apples comparison with the 5.5-inch displays of before. So what I'm saying is we might reach a point where Apple shaves off a bit more bezel, increases the footprint a tiny bit more. Frankly, a 7-inch iPhone is really just 0.15 inches thinner bezel all the way around, and that would get you to 7 inches, which I'm not exactly sure how thick this current bezel that goes around the iPhone is, but it would not take much. And after using the iPad Mini 6 and fitting that thing in my pocket, I'm like, let's go to 7.5. Let's make 8-inch iPhones. Who cares? Let's just have bigger pockets. Okay, Kyle Owen super chatted. He says, is there a difference between the Magic Mouse 2 and the new Magic Mouse Apple just released besides the charging cable? Not from what we can tell. I think we did a comparison side by side, and someone said that the new Magic Mouse has Bluetooth 5 in it or something, but nowhere in the tech specs does it claim that. So I think that's partially speculation. I don't know if we have a teardown, but yeah, I know that Apple came out with a Magic Mouse that was branded as new on the website when the 24-inch iMac came out, and everyone was like, what's the difference? What did they change? I think the rubber feet on the bottom might be slightly different, but yeah, for the most part, it's pretty much identical. I'm looking at it right now. This is essentially exactly how the Magic Mouse I used looks. The only difference that Apple branded it new for is the fact that they made the cable braided. Brand new, right? It's a whole new computer. This the black one is definitely new. This used to only be available when you bought the $6,000 or more Mac Pro. Now you can buy it separately, which is kind of nice. It's an interesting kind of two-tone finish, but thank you, Benjamin, for the super chat. He says Apple should pay live service games like Destiny 2, Overwatch, COD Warzone, and others to become a Mac live service games will be played for a long time. Again, Benjamin, we've had this conversation before. Yes, Apple has a lot of money. I think all of us can agree on that. They have a crap ton of cash in the bank. I think someone reported recently Apple has something like $200 billion in cash that they can technically do whatever they want with. Yes, they could buy out game studios. They could buy out game titles. They could bring exclusive services or game streaming things to the Mac if they wanted. The question that I keep bringing back up, would they see an equal amount or better in return for people who have Macs willing to pay to play COD Warzone or Destiny 2 or Overwatch? Is there a ton of people in the Mac user base that are willing to spend tons of money to the point that Apple's expense of buying up those game titles or buying up those streaming rights, would it be worth it to Apple? Would they make a profit off it? My guess is no. I think the gaming community has kind of flocked to their respective regions. Most people who care about PC gaming have bought PCs. People who buy Macs are just inherently less likely to be interested in games. I'm not saying no one. I know there's some people out there that like to play games and they like their Mac, but the likelihood of Apple seeing billions of dollars in return in revenue, it's just not likely. Like if they saw it as a profitable revenue stream, they would do it. And the fact that they haven't done it and they've shown very little interest in doing it is probably evidence that they've done their research. Apple's done their homework, and they know they're not going to get those game titles back. It could be a loss for the first few years just to build user base. What's the point? Apple's whole logic is to generate more money. That's what the whole mindset is to turn a profit. I mean, yeah, it's also Apple could afford to give away iPhone SEs for free. They have enough money for it, right? They could just give everyone a free iPhone SE. You could use the same argument. It's to expand their user base. Well, we'll get our money back in services. It's like, yeah, they could, but they could also put that money towards other things that will be more instantly profitable, whether it's Apple TV Plus or Arcade, or I don't think those necessarily are super profitable, but the overhead for them is definitely lower. There's $1 billion in game revenue and Apple has none of it. That's not true. Apple makes more money than Steam does through mobile. Mobile makes far more money than AAA game revenue does, for the record. It's incredibly profitable, the gaming sector that Apple's in. Look up the video by Polymatter. It's a fantastic video. It's called Apple is a Gaming Company. And it gives you perspective on how much money Apple generates just through the App Store games. It's far more than what all of these other game companies make. They make a ton of money. And they make far more money than all the AAA games and Apple Music, exactly. Why did you max out your MacBook Pro? I never expected you to do that as a cheapskate. I am not necessarily a cheapskate. I just save my money where I can so that I can have really, really nice individual things. I'm not in favor of buying the highest end version of everything I get. It's just when I use something a lot that I'm going to own for a long time, I want to make sure that it works well and it works reliably. So I could have very easily kept using my iMac Pro. There was nothing really inherently wrong with it. I could still edit videos on it. It could still export in a reasonable amount of time. But we were planning more trips. We were planning more vacations and times we were going to spend away from home that I was going to want to be able to work as I was away. So not necessarily vacations, but just like, okay, if I keep my iMac Pro then we can only be away from home for this long, um, because I can only plan so many videos in advance. And, I could just stop making videos for a month, but of course our revenue would go way down, and that would make our savings goals and investment goals a lot harder to reach. And of course, I want to keep making videos, but we were like, okay, if I could edit while we were on this trip and while we were away from home, we could stay for this long. Basically, as long as I have a decent internet signal and my MacBook, I could work indefinitely away from home, which there are some trips we're planning where we're going to be away from home for quite some time. So I was like, I need a laptop. I want a good one. I want something that's not slower than my iMac Pro. So I didn't want to get the Intel MacBook Pro, and that was available. And we knew Apple was working on higher end versions of Apple Silicon. And I also knew, similar to my iMac Pro, I did not want to buy this Mac and then buy another Mac next year and another Mac next year. I wanted to buy something that would last, that would be future proofed. And when the M1 Max came out, I was like, yep, that looks a heck of a lot faster than my iMac Pro. And it was. It was over twice as fast at exporting, and had great built-in microphones and a great webcam, which was really important for me, especially when I live stream away from home. So I was like, this is a good product for me, and I do want to use it for a long, long time. I don't plan on keeping the Mac Studio. I'm not getting the Mac Pro to keep, at least. I might review it, but I want to buy one Mac and have it last me for many, many years to come. So I will fill up on storage. It's just inevitable. It happens with all my computers. I've never bought a computer that I couldn't fill up. This might be the first one, because I've never had 8 terabytes on a single computer. But to me, buying 8 terabytes was essentially just, oh, wow. Very generous super chat, Benjamin. Thank you. I'll address that point in a second. No, travel iMac is so terrible. I would not recommend it. I've just moving the iMac Pro from this office into the bedroom. Ugh, the thing is so heavy. I would hate to have to carry that thing around with me everywhere on a trip. So we've taken several trips with my MacBook where I basically just have a backpack. I don't even have a suitcase. And I can just toss the MacBook in there and I'm good. So I needed something that was mobile, powerful, and had a ton of storage so that it would last me a very, very long time. And that storage needed to be mobile. I didn't want a RAID server. I didn't want something to plug into externally. I just wanted a ton of local storage so I could take it with me and be fine. So this MacBook Pro fit that use case, and I was actually planning on getting the 4 terabyte model at first, but then the live stream when they announced the new MacBook Pro and it had 120 hertz, I was like, wow, this is amazing. You guys ended up being insanely generous, and there were a bunch of new channel members that joined and a bunch of super chats, and basically that live stream, thanks to you watching, performed incredibly well. Much, much, much better than I was expecting it to do, and everyone in the chat was basically like, Drew, look at how much this stream has generated. Let's go ahead, get the 8 terabyte. They were like, yeah, just max it out, or close to max it out. I didn't get 64 gigs of RAM because I already don't max out the RAM on my iMac Pro, and this is 32 gigs of unified memory, so I was like, yeah, it's fine. So that hopefully answers your question, Dora the Explorer. Okay, Benjamin, biggest super chat of the stream. Thank you very much. He says, I just got an idea. Apple needs to Mac a game engine that rivals Unreal 5 and Unity's and kicks its butt inside the engine that could have a Project Catalyst-like feature that auto-optimizes for Mac. Okay, no more gaming posts. Again, for one, there's similar programs to this. I think Wine. There's programs that try to re-optimize OpenGL program for the Mac, and there's always losses whenever you have to go through that conversion. Again, the demand for gaming on the Mac is not there to warrant Apple spending time on it. That's ultimately the problem. Not to mention, game devs, whenever you support a different platform, whenever you support a new title, you have to provide software updates, because if there's a bug, sometimes that bug applies to the Windows version but not the Mac version. So now the game companies have to dedicate time and energy towards bug fixing and optimizing on different companies' hardware. And Wine is terrible. Yes, it does not work very well. I've used it a couple times. It's not been very, very reliable. I don't like to drink wine either, to be frank, but I've tried it. I don't think people understand how bad I want Portal 2 and Overwatch on iPad. Well, I'm right there with you, Benjamin. I love Portal. I want that on more things. I'm just saying I get why Apple doesn't do it. For the same reason, it would be very nice if Tim Cook reached out to me personally and said, "Drew, I'm going to give you a custom 120 hertz ProMotion Pro Display XDR." Yes, that would be great, and I would love it. Does it make financial sense for them to do it? No. There's no reason from a business perspective to expect that to happen, as much as I would like it. For the same reason, yeah, it would be nice for all of you AAA game fans that want your Mac to be better at gaming if Apple bought up a bunch of game companies and brought a bunch of game optimization over to the Mac. That would be nice, but the financial incentive is not there for them to do it. That's why it's a game engine if Apple is making the physics engine of the game. That's called Metal. It's a thing. It hasn't changed anything. Apple is satisfied with mobile gaming. The next big move will be AR. Wait and see how amazing that will be. Yeah, we've been waiting a while. We're going to have to keep waiting. You can come to wine night sometime, Drew. We'll find one that you like. I've tried a lot of different wines, and they all taste like dusty grape juice. I'm not a fan. Let's see. Now he brings an M1 Max MacBook Pro. Are you considering living a nomadic life? I mean, I kind of like having a home base. We want to travel more though. That's already been an effort of this year. We've spent several weeks in Puerto Rico, and we took a train ride from the West Coast to the East Coast, and we flew to Las Vegas. So we've been doing a lot of traveling. But after doing a lot of traveling, I can agree it's kind of nice to have something to come back to and crash. I don't know if I understand the definition of nomadic lifestyle correctly. I definitely would not want to just not have any home base, and I just have to keep couch surfing, as they call it. And now I got to find some place to stay here. Now I got to have some place to stay here. So we like having at least something that we can say, well, this is ours and it's always ours, and we paid it off and we own it, so it can't be taken away from us. That's kind of nice, but we do want to take more trips, and once we get the Tesla, we'll definitely do that. Simply Pops has joined the stream. He says, "Are you getting the Apple Studio display? I just got here." Yeah, I'm gonna review it. No intention on keeping it at this point. After what Ross Young said about there being a 27-inch mini LED panel in the works that's in production now, and he's saying will launch in June. I know that I might compromise with a studio display in the future, but I at least need to wait and see what Apple has in store for the refreshed Pro display. I don't think the odds are very good for it having 120 hertz. It's not likely, but even if there's a small chance of it happening, I want to wait and see, because maybe you can't get 120 hertz at 6K or 5K or whatever, but if they let me plug in my MacBook Pro to the new Pro display and it supports 120 hertz at 4K, so it's like, okay, if you want ProMotion, you just got to downscale the resolution a little bit. That would be like best case scenario for me, and I'd be like, yes, sold, perfect. I want that one. So because that's rumored to be like somewhat soon, and I'm not in a huge rush, with my MacBook Pro purchase last year, we had trips coming up and we had plans to make. I was like, no, I'm definitely buying a MacBook at this event. I don't care how bad it is. I don't care if all the rumors were wrong, even if it didn't have any of the legacy ports and it didn't have mini LED, even if it was identical to the 2019 MacBook Pro, just now with an Apple Silicon chip inside it. Even if it was slower than my iMac Pro because of the trips we were planning, I was like, nah, I gotta buy a laptop soon. So if no new MacBook Pro came out at that event, I probably would have had to go with a MacBook Air or something and just be like, well, okay, the MacBook's gonna be slower. So I was in a rush, essentially. Not a huge rush, but I was like, before the end of this year, I need a MacBook Pro. Right now, I'm getting by without an external monitor. I don't have the iMac Pro on my desk anymore. I'm just using the iPad and my MacBook. It's not a great setup. It's not ideal. It's not perfect, but I can get by with it. It's not the end of the world. It's a little bit annoying to have to look down all the time. I kind of miss having a display that I can, kind of sit upright like this and look at. I found that more comfortable for my neck, and It's definitely easier when doing things like this. When I'm live streaming, I'm trying to monitor OBS to make sure the stream health is good while simultaneously reading the chat and reading what you guys are saying. Doing that on a 27-inch display, vastly easier than doing it on a 16-inch display. And I tried to get by with Sidecar, but Sidecar acted up and froze, so that kind of defeated the purpose. So I'm mildly in the market for an external monitor, but it's not like a huge rush. Like I can afford to wait. It's not like I'm going to be in trouble if I don't get one soon. So I'm excited to review the studio display. Yeah, I'm excited to plug it in and try it, especially because I've never had center stage on a Mac before, and now we'll finally have center stage with OBS, and it can track me around, and it'll be nice to use a big 27-inch display with my M1 Max chip, so I can have the performance and the large size, and having default built-in speakers, which is really nice. Oh, Owen, thank you for the super chat, and Benjamin. I'll catch up. So, but yeah, I'm getting the studio display. It says it's going to get here on Friday, so we'll see if that happens. Okay, Owen says, do you see Apple buying Lucid or other EV startups to further strengthen its EV plans? I think it's... I really want them to. I've made that suggestion several times because I think Apple and Lucid have very, very similar design philosophies. And they have very similar mission statements in a way. Because Lucid is trying to emphasize... This is kind of EV related, I'm sorry. But I appreciate the super chat, Owen. I'll do a live stream for EV channel tomorrow. But because you super chatted, I should answer the question. Thank you, by the way. Lucid is not prioritizing what Tesla is. Tesla is all about accelerating the transition to sustainable energy. Lucid is about making the best EVs in the world. They're just trying to do high luxury, high range, high build quality, and they're just trying to have like all this attention to detail and making everything refined. And John Rettinger, his review detailed a lot of the things they haven't quite figured out, and there's a lot of problems with it. And I'm definitely not a huge fan of Lucid as a whole. I think they're kind of going after an oversaturated market. But if Apple was to buy an EV company right now, I got to admit Lucid would probably align with Apple's design and emphasis of, I don't think Apple would be very interested in a Rivian, going off-roading and all-wheel drive and camping. I don't think Apple would align with that ideology as much. But I could see Apple being really, really proud of how we have the longest range EV on the market. It also happens to be the most expensive EV on the market. But yeah, that sounds like Apple. Expensive, but high quality and with good range. And I don't know. I could see Apple aligning with... Peter Rawlinson is basically like discount Johnny Ive. And the fact that Lucid... I think the problem is all these EV startups are kind of discovering how difficult it is to ramp production. And Apple is kind of watching the reality unfold of, ramping an electric vehicle is not easy and it's not profitable. And Apple definitely cares more about profitability. And right now, Lucid's, if you follow their earnings calls and you look at their balance sheets, Lucid is not looking very good financially right now. They don't have that much cash on hand, and they're burning through a lot, and they're delivering very, very few vehicles, much lower than they thought they were going to deliver, which means their revenue income is much, much lower. So I don't think Apple wants to just jump in with buying one of those brands before that profitability can be proved and that kind of thing. So, Apple's never so much been about we need to sell at the highest volume. Apple's just always been about we need to have the best option. We need to have the best phone and the best laptop and the best processor and the best battery life. That's more where Apple's attention goes to. It's not about like being the most affordable. So if Apple was interested in entering the EV space, I think buying out Lucid would be the best way to do it. They physically can. They have enough cash on hand. The market cap of Lucid is not that big relative to how much cash Apple has, but I don't think they're that interested in the market yet because it's not proven to be very profitable, unless you're like Tesla and you do everything vertically integrated, but Apple probably doesn't want to do that. Benjamin says, did you hear a report a while back about Google rebuilding all iOS apps with Apple features, YouTube app rework? I think I caught something like that, but I did not get a good gist of it. Um, so I'm sorry, I don't have much to say on it, but I appreciate the super chat. I would like that, rebuilding all the iOS apps with Apple features. I hope they do that, but it's Google, so Google likes to abandon projects. I wouldn't be shocked if they abandoned that one. Zan Bayer says, I tested my M1 Max 64 gig 1 terabyte SSD. I opened 96 tabs in Safari and not a hiccup with the 16-inch laptop. This machine is killer. Unified memory is super underrated. I don't think people realize how good Apple's unified memory system is. I do a crap ton of stuff. Like, even right now, I have Messages, Twitter, Chrome, Safari, OBS, and Final Cut Pro all running simultaneously right now in my MacBook Pro. Barely hear the fans. And for my channel members who are supporting, first link in the description, $2 a month, I live stream myself video editing, color corrected ProRes 4K at 60 video. I'm capturing the display, I'm capturing my face with the webcam and my audio, and streaming at 1080p 60 frames a second. And again, I've never ran out of system memory, and I have multiple browsers open with many tabs. I have 3 tabs open. No, I have 6 tabs open in Safari right now, and I have 3 tabs open in Chrome. Unified memory is amazing. It's insanely good. Let's see. I would love if Google's apps were a bit less googly. Drew, would you ever plan to visit London? We have some friends out in England. We have a bunch of trips we're trying to plan for this year, and I'm not sure if the Europe trip is going to cut it. It's kind of difficult to travel. The nice thing about Europe is all the countries are kind of close together. So ideally what you want to do when you visit Europe is kind of hop between all the different countries. The problem is right now, because of the pandemic and restrictions, there's still a lot of testing that has to go on. You have to get a negative test before you go in and out of each country. And the tests aren't free if you're a tourist. They're free if you're a citizen, but we're not citizens. So trying to get tested and jump between all the countries is going to be kind of a headache, and it adds to the overall cost. So I think we want to wait to go to Europe until there's at least the pandemic has died down a little bit more and there's less testing required, because that would make it more affordable. But there's a bunch of places just within the United States we want to visit this year that won't require additional testing, and we're getting a car that we're going to want to take road trips on soon. So that's probably what our main focus will be on this year. But yeah, we have friends and people we want to visit in Europe eventually. I could also see Apple buying Polestar, especially after the release of the O2 concept. Well, I think Polestar is already mostly owned by, isn't it VW or something? So I don't think Apple can necessarily just buy them out. Daniel Holloway says, I bought the Mate View. It's beautiful, small bezels and bigger aspect ratio, so better for photo editing, and it's like 400 pounds. It's crazy. It also looks like an Apple product. I did check out the link you tagged me in. I'm glad you like it. I hope it works well for you. But first of all, aspect ratio doesn't have a size. It's a ratio. So you can't have a bigger aspect ratio. You just have different layouts or different amounts of screen real estate. Volvo, thank you. Not VW. I knew it was a V. I just couldn't remember. Chris Norton asks, what are we talking about? Kind of a bunch of stuff. I'm trying to answer as much of the chat questions as I could. Apple Car and Mate View. But the Huawei monitor it has a little bit of a chin, and I can tell it's made of plastic, which I'm not a huge fan of, and it's 60 hertz. I'm not really interested in a 60 hertz external monitor in the first place, which is the main reason I'm not keeping the studio display. What is unified memory? Well, basically, like the software, I'm not going to explain it very well, but the operating system can equally utilize the memory more efficiently than traditional RAM. I don't know of a better way to explain it. Hey, Zach, Mr. Hotchkiss, thank you for supporting the channel. Appreciate that. I will catch you in tomorrow's live stream when I'm editing the next tech video. Europeans have to pay for tests to travel. Oh, really? That's not what I heard. We have some friends that live in Germany, and they said that the testing is free, for them at least. But it's kind of sucks. You don't need tests in the European Union if you're vaccinated. We're vaccinated, but that's not what we heard. At least we had some friends of ours that were visiting Europe recently, and they had to pay. So I'm sorry, I take their word for it. I don't know if the things have changed yet, but especially with all the stuff going on in Europe right now, it might not be the best time to visit. Um, MacBook Pro 16 inch or Mac Studio? Well, it depends what you're doing. Like for me, I wanted something I could take with me, of course. If you don't need something that you can take with you, of course, the Mac Studio. That's going to be way better value. It's going to be cheaper, better ports, better I/O, and you have the option of opting for the Ultra, which is not an option on the MacBook. So that's clearly the better option if you're just going to be at a desk all the time. Um, what is Scott? What did Scott say? Buy Canoe, Apple. I'm not biased at all. Canoe is not necessarily in a much different situation. Well, I remember reading at some point Apple was in talks to buy Canoe and it fell through. So I have a feeling that Apple looked into Canoe and probably saw some things that we don't see and decided it wasn't worth buying. Um, but we're just going to have to accept that EV startups burn through a lot of cash, and there's essentially no guarantee that they can turn a profit on their investment anytime soon. So that's going to make buying an EV startup kind of a risky gamble for Apple. And I don't think in the age of Tim Cook trying to pivot everything towards services, Apple's not going to take many risks these days. They're a big $1 trillion company, and they probably don't have much interest in gambling on an EV startup. Even Lucid, even though Lucid has delivered vehicles, there's still a lot of unknowns of, will this company ramp production high enough? Will they become profitable? We don't know yet. So they could buy out Lucid and then it could all crumble, and that investment was a terrible idea. Benjamin super chatted. He says Apple Car is a horrible idea that takes resources away from macOS gaming. But seriously though, it's very stupid. I don't get the hype even a little. I think they kind of missed the mark on it. Benjamin, you said you weren't going to talk about gaming on the Mac again. How dare you? Oh well, you super chatted. Thanks. Um, I'm still salty about the slaughter of the 27-inch iMac. I think that if Apple was interested in entering the EV space, they should have done it like 6 or 7 years ago. That's when the market was still kind of new, and at this point, it's already so saturated and so crowded with so many options. I don't really see anything Apple could make that would be very different from what's already out there. That iPhone moment or that iPad moment that Steve Jobs had when he came before the world and was like, "Hey, everyone, look at this new thing," and it's no buttons and it's all on the touch screen and there's no physical keys and we're doing everything virtually, and like that moment has already been taken by Tesla. Tesla has basically designed, in my opinion, what Apple would design a car to be. And people all love the memes. I know every time we talk about it, it's like, oh, they put the charge port at the bottom and it still uses Lightning. Okay, does it run Windows? Heard a million Apple Car jokes in my life. Okay, you're all hilarious. But if we talk about it seriously for a second, Apple would go minimal, just like they went minimal with the iPhone and the iPad. At the time, that most tablets and phones had lots of physical keys and physical buttons, and Tesla leaned into the software. And I think Apple would do the same thing. They would lean heavily into the software, and they would be all about autonomy. They would do a lot of the same things Tesla does. No, you can't work on it yourself. No, you don't need to worry about upgradability or repairability. It just works. It's just perfect, and we can do no wrong, and it's all about the software being good. And some people like the software, some people don't. And of course, it's all through the Tesla ecosystem with the supercharging. Apple would have their own charger network with their own standard, and it would be faster. That they would have their own they would have their own ecosystem of accessories and software, and it wouldn't play well with other third-party software, just like Tesla doesn't support Android Auto or CarPlay. So they're very similar to each other. It's just with Tesla's in existence, I don't see what Apple could make that would be very different from what already exists. Probably if Apple wanted to make a luxury sedan, it would be incredibly close to the Lucid Air. It would basically be hyper-efficient, high-price luxury, emphasis on software. That it already exists. It's like, okay, there's another high-price sedan. It just has an Apple logo and runs a heavy advanced version of CarPlay. Is that going to be enough for them to be a competitive segment of the space? No, not really. Yeah, there's already enough demand for EVs as it is. Apple makes a car with a 120 hertz display. Drew, this is the best car ever. I hate how right you are, Scott. If Apple was the first car to make, if Apple was the first company to make a car with a 120 hertz display, it would instantly win me over. I'd be like, well, I need one. Honey, let's sell the house. We're buying an Apple car. You want the display made by Apple? Well, it's not. I don't need my external monitor to be made by Apple. I just want it to look good. And the problem is, all of the non-Apple made displays look ugly. They all have to compromise on the build or the bezels, or they got to have some chin, or they got to have some logo, or they got to have some stupid gamer aesthetic. They got to make it look like a stealth F-22 fighter jet with its jagged edges. Oh, it's my gamer aesthetic. It's like, I don't care about it. It looks so ugly. And it pops as the temperature changes. All these ugly plastic external monitors, they like pop and crinkle as you move them. And I love Apple's monitor design. I don't love the price or the display panels themselves, but they're made of aluminum. They're built well, and they have equal size bezel all the way around. The Pro Display XDR, aside from the fact that it doesn't have a webcam or speakers, and it's not 120 hertz, I think that looks gorgeous. Just that one thin black bezel all the way around. I love that clean, minimal aluminum setup. The Mate View still has that kind of plasticky, unsymmetrical bezel look to it that I'm not super into. And it's 60 hertz. So, yeah. If Apple bought Tesla, would you merge both channels? Probably not. I think the markets are different enough, but Apple can't buy Tesla now, actually. They don't have enough money in the bank. They couldn't afford to. I would also insist on getting an Apple-made display. No shame. Okay, that's Zach. I would be open to buying a non-Apple made display if there was a decent one out there. I just can't find it. That prioritizes the things I care about in a monitor. But even Apple's struggling to make the things that I care about. Oh, okay, Marngel explained it best here. He said unified memory means that the RAM is utilized by the CPU and GPU. Other PCs have separate RAM for the CPU and GPU respectively. That's the simplest way to explain unified memory. I think that's probably the best way to put it. So good explanation, Marngel. Thank you. It's like, you don't have to have separate RAM pools like you do for GPUs and CPUs and PCs. What would Steve Jobs do if he was still alive? Would he announce an Apple car? It's impossible to know. Maybe. He definitely was less interested in playing it safe, from what I can tell. He was interested in pursuing projects that were not super profitable for Apple. That was one of the reasons they got rid of Steve Jobs temporarily, was because he kept wanting to pursue side projects in the Mac business because he thought they were cool and interesting, but they weren't profitable. They weren't doing very well for the company, which is kind of Elon-like. Maybe because Steve is more interested in, like, let's make products that are memorable and game changing, and not so much let's make products that are super profitable. Maybe he would have eventually caught on with the battery technology and lithium ions getting better, is because he would see, oh, okay, EVs are the next big thing. No, they're not super profitable, but this could be a big business, and we could make the car a whole lot more futuristic and modern. But I feel like if Steve was designing a car, it would probably end up being very close to what a Tesla is just putting everything on a screen and trying to eliminate as many steps as possible. That's kind of what Apple's in favor of, and Tesla, I think, would be fairly similar in that, right? Of just like, we both want to make the car do all the driving and, make it safe and charging and no gas and it's quiet, and the car does everything for you. There's no key, there's no start button, there's no ignition. Everything just works, and it's regenerative braking for efficiency. So, yeah, he probably would do something like that. You can make a custom casing for an LG monitor? What? I need to see how easy that is. I love the studio display design, but $1,600 for less than 32 inches, no mini LED, and no promotion. Yeah, it's not perfect, but it does look nice. This display doesn't make any sense. I'd consider it if it was HDR, but it's so expensive for what is literally just the old 27-inch iMac display. I like that I like the bells and whistles, basically. I'm a big fan of Center Stage, and the fact that this monitor adds that is awesome. So you can just add Center Stage to any Mac you want, essentially. I like the bezel being the same size thickness all the way around. That is honestly really really hard to find in the monitor business. It's very rare to find any clean looking monitor that just has one size bezel all the way around. That's rare. Um, so I like that it has that, and the spatial audio speakers I'm sure sound great. It seems to have speakers on the top and bottom, so I'm excited to hear that because now the need for you to buy separate audio monitors won't be necessary. And I love that, especially because I do plan on keeping my MacBook Pro for a long time. I can plug it in. Oh, thanks, Benjamin. I can plug it in and get power and video through a single port, plus add 3 more USB-C ports. That's probably the thing I'm most tempted by with this monitor, is the fact that I have all 3 USB-C ports occupied on my MacBook Pro right now. One is using the Cam Link, one is my MagSafe charger, and one is my Ethernet to plug in directly to the T-Mobile beacon. So if I could just replace all of these, non-Thunderbolt accessories by just plugging them straight into the monitor, which the monitor isn't going anywhere, then I could basically just take my MacBook on a trip, and then when I come back home, I put it on the desk, I plug in one thing, and I just have one cable that goes to this external monitor that's really clean, really nice, really symmetrical, and it has all of my Cam Link and Ethernet and charging accessories plugged in from behind it, so you don't have to see all that. And my MacBook just has one thing plugged in, and that's charging it and supplying all the accessories. I love that concept. So I'm very tempted by that feature alone, that I don't see as common on other monitors. An Apple Car would require an unreleased product, such as AR glasses. What? Steve didn't invent the Apple One or Two. Your point is irrelevant. They're both visionaries who saved/elevated their respective brands. Wait, what are we talking about? Steve Jobs and Elon is done. Elon did not invent Tesla. All Elon is Wall Street investor with a cult following. It sounds like someone who doesn't know who Elon is. But there's a lot of haters out there, that's for sure. Benjamin super chatted, Drew, I posted a link to a monitor that I think would be perfect for you. Check chat. What chat? Is it Discord? Is it Twitter? I can't. Where? I don't see it in the live stream chat. I don't see it. I think there's a modification you can do to iMacs to make it an external monitor. Luke Miani did it in one video, although I don't think you can do that with the iMac Pro. Yeah, and that's not my dream setup. I've had the iMac Pro sitting next to my MacBook Pro. It's kind of a dated design. I mean, it's a cool design, but I don't want my external monitor to have a big fat chin and big thick black bezels. This chat? I don't see it anywhere, dude. I'm looking. I don't think links can just be... Tag me on Twitter or put it in Discord and I'll look at it. I don't think the links are allowed to be posted in the chat. The Mac Studio pics are popping up. Yeah, I saw someone got one earlier. That's kind of cool. How would spatial audio work on a monitor that doesn't move? Well, spatial audio works... spatial audio is a thing on, like... Well, isn't it? No, that's Dolby Atmos. Spatial audio... It's on things like HomePods, where, like, it can measure its surroundings and play audio differently depending on where it's located against a wall and that kind of stuff. I think that's what it is. Let's see. It's expensive, but I don't think it's easier to find another monitor at that price point with that pixel density. Well, I think Apple intentionally pushes the pixel density a little bit further so they can justify much higher cost, because then you can't really find something that matches the specs as easily. That's the problem. I could see. I can hear the fans in your MacBook. I'm sure it's not my M1 MacBook Air. I mean, I can barely hear it. It's pretty quiet, but when I plugged in my old external microphone, there was a lot more white noise. You already missed the iMac Pro. I would have liked to see the M1 Ultra or something go on the iMac Pro, but unfortunately, there's just... You can't have a monitor with everything. So I'm wondering if I'm willing to compromise with 60 hertz instead of 120 and I get all these other great things, maybe I could live with it. But again, I want to see what happens in June. I want to see this mini LED panel that Ross Young keeps talking about. I want to know how much it costs and what accessories it includes, and if it can do ProMotion at 4K, that would be wonderful. Scott says he would still give up HDMI with another USB-C. Oh yeah, hands down. I've still never once in the past 6 months of ownership, I've never once plugged in an HDMI cable to my MacBook Pro. So that port has been entirely useless. You could put a hidden port set up under your desk along with better speakers and a much better webcam unless you're doing yoga and a bunch of people in your office. Not sure how center stage matters. When I'm doing live streams like this, also when I'm doing live streams for the channel members, I'm moving around. I'm like setting up the camera, I'm setting up the microphone, and I'm talking to them as I'm moving around. So center stage is really fun for live streaming. Also, I disagree. I have not seen a much better webcam than the 12 megapixel center stage camera that they've shipped on iPads. That camera is amazing, and the fact that it tracks with you is much better than all the third-party webcams I've seen out there. Ultra wide OLED display, it's slightly cheaper. I don't really like ultra wide, but Alienware I'm guessing is going to have a bunch of gamer aesthetic on it. I guess I'll look into it, but I don't want to have a bunch of stuff on my desk. I'm not looking for the best speakers in the world. I'm just looking for clean, simple, elegant setups. But I've been streaming for a while, and I hate to say it, but I've got some errands to run. I've got some places to go. But even though the live stream is ending, a new tech video has just been published. So I'll drop the link in the chat for you guys to enjoy. I appreciate all the super chats and the new channel members we got today. I'll look forward to seeing you guys in tomorrow's live stream. And thank you all for tuning in. Hope you have an excellent rest of your day. Take care. Bye-bye.